We're back. That was really creepy. I'm sorry. So we're back here with the Schmoofcast, the Schmoofy podcast, the Schmoofcast, the whatever you want to call it.
Cast of the Schmoof.
We are Kristen and Brett. We are Orlando theme park enthusiasts. You can find us across social media at the Schmoofs, over on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find me, Brett, on Twitter at Schmoofy as well. Together we have over 20 years experience in the hospitality and themed entertainment industry, and we are here to share our love and passion for said theme parks with you.
Yay!
Yeah. So this will mark our third technical episode?
I think it's actually technically the second episode.
After the intro, so.
The intro doesn't count.
No. So this episode we're going to be discussing, it was actually a question. Did you pose it to me or did I pose it to you?
I posed it to you. You're not this deep.
Okay. So a while ago, Kristen asked me, just out of nowhere in like a car ride home one night, and she was like, if you can go to, like, how did you phrase it?
If you could visit Epcot at any point in its timeline, when would you go and why?
And that's past, present, future, like any time since Epcot opened till the future, like, and we'll just say the future as being when all of these new projects are done after Ratatouille and Guardians and the Pavilion, the projects. After
what we
done.
know, yeah, we can't go beyond what we know.
But everything that's been announced once it's all done.
Yeah, but that's kind of the question is, I mean, you in particular have a love-hate relationship when it comes to Epcot, because half the time it is your favorite park, the other half of the time you can't walk around without saying it's trash. So I felt like it was a really valid question in terms of your fanboyness. Yeah. Your Epcot fanboy.
I don't. So I am always complaining on Twitter. If you follow me, you know I am always complaining about Epcot. Always. Epcot is, in my opinion, one of the biggest potentials of any Disney theme park product, IP, whatever you want to call it, of itself. Yeah, I would consider Epcot an IP of itself at this point. Like, Epcot has branded, like, they're not just, whatever. Anyway, I'm getting too far into that. But I think that it is the biggest wasted opportunity that I've ever had at Disney, that they originally had something that was, according to what everybody has said, was amazing. But I'm not sure if amazing in 1982 standards would be the same as 2020 standards.
Hence the question. If you were to, where would you go? Or what time would you go to Epcot to try and have that golden Epcot experience that people talk about? When do you think that existed? That's
the question. When did it exist? So
obviously it did, because they're the Epcot fanboys, yourself included, have this golden, like, yesteryear or ideal Epcot.
The ideal Epcot. And some form of this ideal Epcot revolves around, of course, Horizons, Journey into Imagination, and then I think those are the two major points for people, is that...
It's not people, it's you.
No,
Give your own opinion here, Chad.
I don't care. That's my thing. I don't care about Horizons. I don't care about Journey to Imagination. I think that Figment is just... people say that he didn't used to be a nuisance, and he was this very loving and adorable character. I've only ever known Figment to be this annoying Imagination Institute Gene Wilder type deal, and that's not the way that I think I should have grown up with Figment. But I digress. I wasn't born at that point. I couldn't have experienced it. So in order for me to fully, like, what I feel that the best Epcot would have been, I'll relate back to when I first experienced this here in the early 2000s, when Wonders of Life was really a thing. Wonders of Life, of course, opened in 1989. So at that point, it was already a decade old, but it still was like the newest thing at Epcot. That was also the point when they were still doing a bunch of the new Interventions exhibits. Tom Morrow 2.0 was brand new, and he was all over Disney Channel, and it was all over the Disney Adventures magazine, if you remember that. So that was a really interesting time for me to be here personally. But if I could pick a time to go to... Anytime
in Epcot's history, whether or not you were alive or not.
Let's do 1990. Exactly, just 1990.
Just 1990. Why 1990?
Well, look at it like this. Wonders of Life opened in 89. Wonders of Life brought Body Wars, Cranium Command, Making of Me, and whatever else was inside that pavilion, because
I have no memories of that pavilion. I must have visited it because I was here when it was open. No memories whatsoever.
It was great. You would have liked it. There were these wonder cycles that you could pedal through. It was like you're on a little mini bike, and one went through Disneyland.
Huh.
Yeah, it was cool. There's videos of it online. I'll show you later. But Wonders of Life struck me as this really, really amazing thing. I love Body Wars. I love Cranium Command. These were very... they had influential moments in my childhood. So I'd love to be able to relive that right at their prime. But also at this point, Horizons would have already been opened. So I don't, like I said, I don't really care about Horizons. I love the references. I love what it kind of did and kind of cemented Epcot in its forward way of thinking or its futuristic approach on things.
I feel like you're lying. I feel like you're lying to the people and you're lying to yourself because you are seriously Horizons obsessed. You know every outcome of Horizons. You can quote it. You've seen video of it. You never experienced it, guys. He literally never did the ride. But you remember it more than I do as someone who did the ride.
A few years ago, I was the bad Epcot fan, where I've never been on Horizons. The first time I saw the building when it was half demolished, getting ready for Mission Space. That was exciting for me. But Horizons, you kind of have this Epcot phase where you try to go through every retro Disney World site to try to find pictures and video and imagery. Mesa Verde Times. I went through and watched all of their videos and saw all their pictures, read all their posts about running through Horizons, and that's how I learned about the attraction, pretty much. And that's interesting for me. I would love to have experienced Horizons, but it wasn't a selling point for me. What would have been a selling point for me, though, like I said, we're around that time that after Wonders of Life opened. So if Wonders of Life is opened, that means that Living Seas is opened. Because Living Seas also was not an original pavilion. And I have, that was also a big memory for me, is the show before the hydrolators in Living Seas with the deluge, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained.
Deluge?
The deluge. That's a big memory for me. But the hydrolators, oh man. I would give anything to go back and just ride the hydrolators a few more times. They were so cool. Nemo's garbage. Nemo. My problem with Nemo right now is that they took the shell of Living Seas and decided to just shoehorn something into it without going 100% on the theme or idea. And I think that Finding Dory gave them this amazing key that they have just not utilized to their advantage. There is no reason why they cannot transform the Living Seas into the Marine Life Institute.
Well, there are references.
To the Marine Life Institute? Mm-hmm. Well, they just installed some new signage that's very similar, and they're calling back to the old Living Seas logo at this point, but it's still... Like, you took a hydrolator down to Seabase Alpha, like you were below the water... You'd have to take a hydrolator back up, too. Like, it was that convincing. It was that cool.
1990.
Yeah, back in the pinnacle. But at that point, I would need to do some more of my research at this. But, the attractions are what seals it for me. And I think that was right before Epcot started to have this gigantic transformational stage. Before they started to bring in the major store mouse gear. Back when they probably had a lot of the Communicore stuff still going. I think at that time...
Dinosaur in a bush.
With the what?
Dinosaur in a bush? Was that a thing at the time?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Outside of...
Oh, yeah.
Former Club Cool, there was a dinosaur in a bush.
I remember. Oh, the Splashtacular.
I don't know what it was. Yeah. I just remember that there was a dinosaur in a bush.
They had Mickey on a crane, and the Fountain Nations danced, and... Epcot was wild before they still don't know what to do with Epcot. And I think that's part of the reason why the future of Epcot concerns me and why I wouldn't want to go to the future is that for the longest time, they were just throwing whatever at the wall for Epcot. And that was something it was their new theme park and their new grounds to just try to do something different, something interesting, something wild.
I feel like, though, if we're looking at time frames and you're talking about throwing things to the wall, like between 2014, probably 2015 to 2020 now, as we are in our construction phase, that was throw an overlay on it, see what happened. I have a very strong feeling about that when it comes to Epcot, is that these last couple of years have just been a throw an overlay on it. It's fine. Throw an overlay on it. It's fine.
I will never forgive them for ruining an entire expansion plot for a meet and greet for Anna and Elsa.
Oh, that's not okay. That is a beautiful expansion.
But
that's a great shop, and I think that it works out well, because what else would you have put there?
Brazil. or South America, or I'm sorry, Equatorial Africa.
There's not enough space there. There's legitimately not.
Well,
they required the restrooms because those were there. And they needed them. So that was an expansion that needed to happen. They were already themed to Norway, so it didn't make sense to change it. And you're bringing in, like, the stage that's there is way better than the stage that was put out directly on the main walkway. If you're doing things like the holiday stuff or anything that's happening there.
All right, so the space is logical and it makes sense, and that's fine. I'm personally okay with Frozen Ever After, though. Like, Maelstrom was great and all, but, like, at the end of the day, it was like, haha, Vikings, Norway. Like, at least Frozen kind of, like, is, it feels like a Disney ride.
Meh.
You can't really change it at this point. It's fine.
I don't have a problem with the idea of Frozen. I think that's what a lot of people's problem was, is that, they're bringing in characters into Epcot, which it has been the theme since 2014 or 2013 or whatever, is bringing more characters into Epcot. My only problem with Frozen Ever After is it feels like a lot of dead space. But then again, when it was Maelstrom, it also felt like a lot of dead space. So that's nothing new.
It's a very unique and interesting...
It's a weird building. Yeah. That's all it is. It's a weird building.
And they're copying and pasting that for Hong Kong.
I mean, that's fine. It works out. It works well. They get a crowd. It gives you the interaction with characters that you want. Tells you whatever story that you're willing to absorb from it. It just feels like empty space. And I feel that way a lot more now than I would have at, say, the beginning of the year or like before December of last year. Because now we're looking at things like Rise of the Resistance or Runaway Railway, where dead space is not a thing.
Yeah.
There's literally none. But
and there's going to be that one person that says, but all the dead space in the Twister scene in Runaway Railway, it's all black walls. That's all dead space. It's not dead space. It's fine. It's a Twister. You don't need to look at the wall behind you in a Twister. Like, half of the Frozen walls are black.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It's very much it doesn't have a lot. But that being said...
But then every inch, like you said, of Rise of the Resistance, every single inch of that facility is themed.
But this actually, that whole concept brings me to... So you're claiming 1990. 1990 is your time.
Let's do 1990 for me, yeah. Because that seemed to be a good time. If I were to rethink about it, I might say 2000 because of the Millennium Celebration and the Interventions time frame, but I don't think that really sold it for me. I think it more sells it for me as the being able to experience Horizons and World of Motion and the Jeremy Irons version of Spaceship Earth at that point with everything else. Like that's what seals it for me.
See, I think for me, I want to look, I would say future Epcot. I would say after construction is done. And I'm going to caveat that statement.
Okay.
I'm going to caveat that statement to if concept art is real. Because looking at things like World Celebration and
neighborhoods,
the neighborhoods that are supposed to be coming to Epcot, thinking of the things that we have seen recently with expansions for attractions or just new buildings that Disney has done, I have a lot of faith in the future of those, particularly that World Celebration.
Oh, there's huge potential.
The Celebration Pavilion, because I think that is going to be the pinnacle of theme park experience when it comes to Epcot. And I hope that that's the case. I also think, like, when you look at meandering paths of the Journey of Water, I'm excited to see that. I'm just excited to see how they do that. I'm excited to see, once things are done with that, how they might incorporate new things into the existing areas. I think that there's a lot of potential for the ideas that they have down on paper moving forward. And I really only get that faith from looking at things like Runaway Railway or Rise of the Resistance or the Riviera Resort, Grand Destino. These are the newest construction phases that Disney has seen, and they're gorgeous. Attraction-wise, they're really well done, but just structurally and story-wise, I have a lot of hope for what's coming. That being said, I'm not on board with all of it. We're still in the interim of what may happen when it comes to like the UK Pavilion and the Mary Poppins. I'm not sure I'm okay with that part.
Well, then, I mean, in terms of like the future of Epcot, let's talk about the current future of Epcot. Disney just took over. Let me caveat this by saying Disney doesn't own all of Epcot.
No, they don't. That is actually something that a lot of people are very confused on. The pavilions themselves, a lot of them are actually owned by the parent nation, if you will, which is why a lot of the times when you see people that are working in those areas, they're what are called operating participants, where they're not Disney cast members.
It's a third-party company.
That doesn't mean they're not going to wear Disney name tags. Doesn't mean they're not going to give the same level of Disney service. But if you have ever tried to use a discount or things like that, if you're a pass holder or Disney Vacation Club or
Magic Band for
or
room
use
payments.
your Magic Band for room payment, you may have very different experiences because they are not all owned and operated by Disney. And that's been actually a really big adjustment point now with the COVID-19 pandemic, because a lot of these pavilions, they were run by cultural representatives from those parent countries, and that program had to be cut for obvious reasons, for just allowing people to go home, safety, and things like that. Those programs were cut.
And a lot of those full-time positions that were available for culturally significant people here were removed as well. The company that runs most of the Mexico Pavilion, the shopping and the dining specifically, they fired and furloughed and laid off most people. So when Disney was like, hey, we're going to reopen, Disney called a lot of their cast members back to work the Grand Fiesta Tour.
Yep.
And the restaurants.
Merchandise or attractions or dining.
They're still working the Margarita Bar and quick service on the promenade.
It's still true of most of the pavilions. Most of the pavilions just have Disney cast members now, as opposed to having any kind of cultural representatives, people that would not normally be in those places. And that's very significant. But
so all the pavilions that we're talking about specifically, Mexico is not ran by Disney. China is not ran by Disney. Italy, also not ran by Disney. Japan, Morocco, France. So all those. So Canada, UK, American Adventure, Germany, Norway. I've been missing one there? No.
I have no idea.
The African Outpost. They're all ran by Disney. They've always been ran by Disney. But then, okay, so back on the original topic.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if all of those are.
They are, yep.
Are you sure?
100%. They're all Disney.
Oh, okay.
So back on the original, like the present future type deal. Morocco just relinquished control of their pavilion to Disney.
Yes.
It just happened.
Literally, this is why Spice Road Table opened like 2 days ago that we were talking about, if you guys were listening previously. Like, they just opened earlier in the week under the new management. And it's a crazy time. It's a crazy time.
Something that we never thought we would ever see happen is that one of these pavilions would lose control. And of all of them, Morocco. So now Disney reopened Spice Road Table and they reopened the merchandise on the promenade. But now that Disney has control, what's going to happen to Restaurant Marrakesh and the rest of the stuff back there? Is it going to be safe from just an Aladdin takeover?
Well, it's a great question in terms of, because it's not just the food, because that's a big part of it, obviously, but things like the wares that are sold there.
They were direct imports.
Direct imports. It could be very different depending on what Disney wants. And a lot of the things, when you are looking at these pavilions that have their parent country really involved in them, is they really have it's their way of essentially dictating how they want to represent their country to the millions upon millions of people that visit Walt Disney World. And that is very interesting in terms of, for example, if you look at Morocco, a lot of people don't realize there is actually like a small museum, an exhibit that is just directly inside of the pavilion. Right now, I believe it's talking about...
it's about like dune racing. Like,
yeah, dune racing, and I think like is it the Silk Road?
The Silk Road, like the fashion or something like that. It's Race Against the Sun, I think is what it's called.
But it's had a lot of different pieces that were imported from the country to be kept on display here. And so I wonder if that's going to be changing. But it does really change kind of how Epcot will look in the future. If Disney has the ability to kind of take a controlling interest in some of these pavilions, are we going to see things like with Norway, how we do have a very strong character IP there?
I mean, Frozen is based on Norway, so that it makes sense to involve it there. It's not the worst thing in the world. But with these, like, China is safe. I would assume China is safe from being taken over by, like, Mulan. And I would assume Italy's being safe from being taken over by, like, let's say Pinocchio and Lady and the Tramp. And what else is Italian? I think Lady and the Tramp, only Tony's Italian. So,
only Tony is Italian in that one.
And he has his own restaurant.
That thing.
I guess just Pinocchio out there? What else is out there?
Oh, goodness, I have no idea. But I'm sure there's a lot of different iterations of fairy tales.
But they're kind of like pushing Ratatouille into behind France. I think Ratatouille is... I think it's a natural fit. But I'm not sure if I feel that Mary Poppins is the same natural fit to the UK. Or
I think the redoing it to Cherry Tree Lane, I think, is a great fit. I think that what Disney has to be careful of in that end is the incarnation of Mary Poppins that they choose to use. I think that for me, did you watch the new Mary Poppins? I didn't think you did.
I didn't. I'm honestly not a Mary Poppins fan.
See, I really enjoy the original Mary Poppins. It was a big thing for me. And I did watch the second one, and I was one of those people that I'm like, you know what, I'm not getting it. Not to say the acting wasn't wonderful, or that it wasn't well written. It just didn't feel like Mary Poppins to me. So if they were to bring that version of Mary Poppins into Epcot, I would kind of be more meh about it. But the idea of having it be Cherry Tree Lane, because that was the same for both of them, that would be great. If they're taking things that are not specific in context to one or the other, or if they are pulling from the original. We talked about it a lot. There's a little stage that they have back in the gardens in the UK pavilion, and I would die to see a Mary Poppins merry-go-round. Essentially just a carousel with Mary Poppins, the painted horses, and other animals. I think that would be the funnest thing in the world.
It would be a great fit for that area, but I mean, let's go back to what Chapek said at D23 when they announced all the Epcot plans. Is he told the Imagineers to dream big and keep dreaming bigger. I forgot the exact verbiage, but it was just like make it bigger, make it bigger, make it better.
But I'm really interested seeing those things. Honestly, I get chills every time we do the Epcot experience, so I do have to pick future Epcot because I want it to be so good, guys. I just want it to be good.
It had such potential to be good before COVID hit. Like, they were full steam ahead on making Epcot, like, giving Epcot the money and attention it deserves. The park really does. It deserves to be the highlight of your Walt Disney World experience, your entire Walt Disney World vacation. And right now, I wouldn't be 100% honest with you. I've been doing a lot of Uber and rideshare on the side, and talking to a lot of people who are just not going to Epcot.
It's rough right now. It is one of those things that they had a finished timeline, in which case we got to get all these projects done. So they started all of them. And right now we are definitely feeling the growing pains.
It's bad.
So that's the other reason why I have to think that it's got to be worth it. It's got to be worth it to get to that end, to see what will become of that park.
Well, if Disney doesn't really do construction walls willy-nilly.
They don't, but it feels like it at Epcot right now.
It feels like...
everywhere you go is a wall.
It's a wall. But they wouldn't have done this if they didn't feel that the end product wouldn't have been worth the current inconvenience.
Yeah. So I think that's what it is for me. I have to look forward. But I also have to admit, like, my 100% the best memory I have of Epcot was in 2010 during, I think it was like the 15th anniversary of Food and Wine. All of the attractions that were there at the time, everything that they had food-wise, everything going on in the festival center, the seminars, everything like that. That was 100% my favorite Epcot experience that I have ever had. And so there's been a lot of changes since then, and I hope to be able to have that same level of enjoyment in that park once everything is done. So once we reach that pinnacle point of construction being done, the walls being down, I think that's what I have to go with.
I'm very cautious about the future of Epcot because I mean they took Test Track 1.0 and we didn't know, like, Test Track was like, okay, cool, it's a fast ride. Moving to Test Track 2.0, which is the very Tron looking Test Track, it doesn't have any personality.
That's true. They did take a lot of the personality out of it when they were doing recent changes.
And it lost a lot of its flair. It lost a lot of its just...
I think that's true of a lot of the things that they've updated, though. Because, for example, Soarin' Around the World, I think it loses... If you've ever watched Soarin' Over California, there were things throughout that were just little giggle moments, whether or not you had someone... like the golf ball coming at you,
so much personality,
or people falling over while skiing.
The fly fisher going, talking to the guy in the kayak, being like, "You catch anything?" And then he's like, "Finally!"
Yep.
It's like it's the little things that really made it. The part that of California kills me. I mean, I'm going to take over for a second because California, when they filmed Soarin' Over California, they purposely flew sideways at the Golden Gate Bridge. They purposely flew sideways at all these major big landmarks. They purposely flew at night for downtown Los Angeles so that you wouldn't be able to see these warped buildings on the curved projection dome of Soarin'. So it was all on purpose, and it was all very, very...
mindful.
It was mindful. They knew what they were doing. They knew their technology. They knew the limitations, and they rocked it out. And then Soarin' Around the World is like, we put the Eiffel Tower in the middle, and it goes wee off to the side. Because they just... I don't know what happened in Imagineering that are like, we can make Soarin' better. And they did. Digital projectors. They added some transitions between scenes, and it's really cool. And they kept a lot of the same audio, and they added a beginning cut through the clouds. It looks really good. But then the little things that you expect from Walt Disney Imagineering are just gone. All of the flavor, all of the emotion is just not there.
But I have to hope that it'll come back.
Hopefully. But we also saw this with Mission Space. They brought in the new actress. What's her name from Firefly?
I have no idea. I know who you're talking about, but I don't know her name.
I don't know her name.
She's from Firefly, and she's wonderful, but she's our new Capcom.
She's Capcom, but they literally just copied the script from the Gary Sinise version exactly, down to his little pauses and stutters and stirs.
It's very sad.
And it's just like, it feels like she didn't make it her own, but that's not her to do. That was the instruction from Disney. Yeah,
it does feel like...
I'm trying to say this in the nicest way possible, because the script is fine. It's just... She wasn't given the opportunity to make it her own.
I think this just comes down to something that I felt, and we've talked about it before, and if you heard our last episode, I will constantly talk about how great Disneyland is. But I do have a big thing where I feel like Disneyland was really meant for, like, Walt built Disneyland for his daughters, is the saying, and the Walt Disney Company built Disney World for the people. It doesn't necessarily have that same feeling. They were there, and I do think that we can bring those things back, because if you look at Runaway Railway, a lot of it is very emotion evoking. It kind of pushes you to that. It pushes you into that da-da-da-da-da-da happy mind frame. So I hope that will come to Epcot. I'm going to say it will, because I have an emotional reaction when I watch the Epcot experience reel.
It feels like they know what they need to do.
So, here's hoping.
Yeah, and I mean that's more than we can say about, like, what they revealed about Galaxy's Edge ahead of time. Like, it was nothing, we're building it. And then a week before opening, they unveiled everything. It was like, whoa, okay. And Galaxy's Edge is a great land, but it doesn't feel very... those of you who listen to the podcasting, I'm going to use the word kinetic. It doesn't feel kinetic. Yeah. It just, there's no... It doesn't feel lived in. It just feels very bare and barren sometimes.
But I also feel like that's very different, because when we went to Disneyland, Galaxy's Edge, it felt like anyone could come out of a door and that it was like a real place. Disney World doesn't feel that way. And it's hard
the
to
same
say,
thing. It's hard to even explain it.
There's one big difference between Disney World and Disneyland. And that is that there is a entry point at Disneyland that passes through essentially the center of the town.
Well, it goes, if you're in Disney World and you look at, if you're over near the milk stand, near Kylo Ren's Thai Echelon, that doorway over to the right near the Thai Echelon is open at Disneyland.
It's a pathway. And here, it just is a cutoff corner.
And that entire area feels like a stadium. It feels like a football stadium, like a dead end.
It feels very weird. But there, they don't have that. It's just that those tiny differences. But I do have hope that we can have those connections coming to Epcot. So yeah, future. We have a good chunk of time between your ideal Epcot and mine.
My ideal Epcot, like I said though, ideal Epcot it's a relative term, because of course you're gonna get the fanboys being like, I want to be there October 1st, 1982, right for the opening. And it's like, what did you expect to do on opening day? Are you kidding?
I saw those spacesuits. I want to be there too.
Yeah, it looked wild, but give them a few years to get their entire situation figured out. And I still don't think that the original Epcot idea, the original pavilions, was this big, fully fledged idea that all worked together because it was all built at the same time. Anything that they tried to update or modify or move into that puzzle piece, or the entire big puzzle afterwards, was a piece from a different puzzle that didn't quite fit in, but we'll make it work somehow. We'll cut an edge off, we'll saw it in, it'll be fine. So the original Epcot puzzle is now a conglomeration of 50 different other puzzles. And the future of Epcot should hopefully be let's start fresh.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. I wish they would have demolished all the Communicore buildings instead of just half them. Fountain of Nations didn't deserve this.
Oh, that was a sad day.
Yeah. But the Play Pavilion looks fun.
I'm excited. I'm excited just to see them incorporating a more digital age. Because that's the idea of Epcot, right? Is that it was constantly looking ahead. And when you are looking ahead in our world, it is a digital world. That's I mean, guys, we're talking to you through the internet. That's literally just the way that life has been. And in the last 20, 30 years, it's been a huge shift in how we communicate and how we have experiences as a global community. So I think that it's a requirement that Epcot takes a step into that. So when you look at like the Play Pavilion, or when you look at any of the other updates that they're doing, it's a necessity. The challenge is that they've decided it's a necessity all at once, which again could just be the starting fresh, like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Like, we're just going to make the puzzle its own thing now.
Epcot was neglected for so long, and we can say the same thing about studios. Years before they even announced Toy Story Land, we were hearing rumors that they were going to be putting a Toy Story Playland back in the old. It wasn't Battle Express at that point. It was the Studio Catering Company.
Yeah.
We heard that they were going to be doing a Toy Story Playland, very similar to what they had over at Paris and Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
With the two flat rides, the RC Racer and the Green Iron Man parachute drop, and that was going to be a thing. And then it ended up being a big, fully fledged Toy Story Land. But that was so many years off from when studios started closing things down. They were still years away from even starting or announcing any construction to be happening. So at least Epcot was like, we're announcing it and let's hit the ground running. We're going.
Go.
So we'll see. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood.
So let us know, for you guys, what you would consider your perfect time at Epcot. Let us know why. This is why I asked Brett this question, honestly, to begin with, is I find it fascinating how we all experience theme parks. We all experience them differently. What was important to us is vastly different. So let us know what you guys think. You can tag us on any of our social medias at the Schmoofs. and just let us know.
And
I'm
everybody's
excited.
going to have a different answer, and that's going to be the coolest part about this. Is that I'm sure there's going to be specific days that people are like, I want to go to this day because this reason.
Which is awesome. Stay tuned for our next episode. We will hopefully be able to get it to you soon. But till then, signing off for the day, this is Kristen.
And Brett, thanks for listening.